once was a time when all the forests and woods in the world were somber, lonely places, full up with strange beings that sang mournful songs in the trees, and most unusual creatures that lived in damp holes and ate toadstools and moss. In those days, there were no paths or trails to help you find your way. Even if it were in the middle of the afternoon and the sun was shining brightly, it was common for deep parts of the forests to be as black as the darkest night. You could walk just a little distance into a clump of brambles to pick some ferns or wild blackberries, turn around to find your way home, and suddenly not know where you were. Many people who never learned those dangers wandered off, got lost, and were never heard from again. It was near just such a forest that a family of woodcutters lived. The father was a huge man, as tall as a giraffe, with strong hands for holding the enormous axe he used to cut down trees. But his wife was a thin bone of a woman, mean to her children, and always complaining that there was never enough food for them all to eat.
We'll absolutely perish with starvation unless there's more food in the markets to bring into this miserable cottage. Or unless there are fewer mouths to feed. It would be one thing if we could eat branches and twigs or roofs and doorknobs, but we can't, and that's all there is to it. Something better be done, husband. Something better be done. Something better be done, husband. Something better be done.
The woodcutter's wife had an orange wart right on the tip of her nose, and some of the other woodcutters who lived near the forest said she bore a peculiar resemblance to Muzzledork, the scrawny witch of the woods who lured children to her magic house and then ate them up with bat gravy and mushroom mash.
Mark my words, that woman looks exactly like a witch.
She's up to no good. And that's nothing to be up to.
Always complaining about food.
Always hungry.
And have you seen her orange wart lately?
It's actually growing.
And think of her poor children.
She feeds them like sparrows.
And keeps the rest for herself.
No!
Yes.
Woodcutter and his wife had two beautiful children called Hansel and Gretel. They were twins, a boy and a girl, each with black hair and green eyes, and each with a special red cape that their father had made for them out of his old woodcutting jacket. But it was true that they never had enough to eat, and although they seldom complained, they were very thin, and it was a long time since their cheeks had been rosy. One day, when the markets had no food, the woodcutter's wife sent the children to bed early, and she explained her plan to her worried husband.
There's only one thing to be done. One thing. Hansel and Gretel must be sent away to take care of themselves. Otherwise, we'll perish. And I mean absolutely perish.
But they're hardly old enough for that. Hansel even has trouble helping me with my work. He is so thin. And Gretel barely has the strength to carry water from the well.
How can you possibly expect to feed those two little brats? when there's practically nothing here for ourselves?
Then we'll do without food and give what there is to the children. They're growing.
Who, me? Go without food? Ha! Double ha! Triple ha! Something better be done, husband. Something better be done.
Upstairs in their small bedroom, the children had been unable to sleep because it was so early. And since their mother was talking so loudly, they heard every word.
Gretel, do you really think they'll send us away? Where could they send us, Hansel? There's only the forest. And they'd never be that cruel. There are bad things in the forest. We sing mournful songs in the trees. And live on toadstools and moss. Oh, Hansel, don't even talk about it. Gretel, you're right. Good night.
But the weeks went by, and still the markets had no food. All through the country there was a famine, and even the people who had not been so foolish as to eat everything up at once found themselves without so much as a breakfast cereal or peanut butter or even a box of cookies. So once more the woodcutter's wife sent the children to bed early, without supper of any kind, and fingering the orange wart on her skinny nose, she again revealed her plan.
Now listen, and don't give me any argument. Tomorrow morning we'll take the children into the deepest part of the forest, since you know the way from all your tree chopping. We'll light a fire, give them each a bread crust or something, and pretend to go off looking for new trees to cut down.
You mean we'll leave them there alone?
Well, not exactly alone. There are always the creatures and beings to keep them company. And anyway, we'll be rid of them.
But they're our children. If we left them alone, the wild creatures would eat them.
Well, then, at least the wild creatures won't be as hungry as we are. Otherwise, all four of us will absolutely perish of starvation. Something better be done, husband. Something better be done. Something better be done, husband. Something better be done.
Her words had a hypnotic effect on the woodcutter, whose eyes glazed over as he stared at the wart on her nose, which glowed like an orange bulb. And eventually, not knowing what he was doing, he agreed to her plan.
Oh, Hansel, did you hear what they want to do? Don't cry, Gretel. I'll find us a way out.
When the entire house was silent and the lamps were out, and only the crickets could be heard in the night, Hansel got out of bed, put on his red cape, and climbed down the drain pipe from outside their small bedroom window. The moon was shining brightly, and the white pebbles around the house were as bright as peppermint candies. He wandered about, picking up as many pebbles as he could hold, stuffing them into all his pockets, and then he climbed back upstairs again.
Hansel! Oh, where have you been, Hansel? It's one thing to be scared about tomorrow together, but alone it's awful. Now I told you not to worry. Everything's going to be fine. And tomorrow night, instead of being in some dark, scary place, we're going to be right back here in bed. Good night.
As soon as the sun was up, the mean woman woke them by banging the broom on the ceiling downstairs.
Time to get up! Time to get up, you lazy things! We're going into the forest to get some wood. Can't lie around in bed all day, you know. Get up!
The entire family dressed, not having any breakfast at all, and set out into the woods. Gretel put their 2 pieces of dinner bread under her cape because Hansel's pockets were full of white pebbles. Every so often, he would reach his hands out into the air and open them suddenly.
What are you doing, son?
Only trying to catch butterflies, Father. There's so many pretty ones flying around.
Don't be such a goon, wasting your time. There's work to be done.
But Hansel had not been trying to catch butterflies. He had been dropping a pebble on the ground each and every time he reached his hand out. And by the time he was told not to do it, they were already in the middle of the forest.
Now pick up some kindling, children, and make a good warm fire.
Your father and I are going to look for some good trees to chop up. If you get tired waiting, go right ahead and fall asleep. We'll be back to get you before dark.
Hansel and Gretel huddled by the fire, and when dinner time came, they ate their bread crusts. They waited and waited, such a long time that their eyes got tired, and finally they fell asleep, with their red capes covering them to keep them warm. But when they awoke, it was night time, and no one had come back for them.
Oh, Hansel! They have left us alone to die. Eaten up by some creature. Now, don't get scared again. As soon as the moon comes out, we can see a little better. I have a surprise for you.
The moon was still full when it rose, the way it had been the night before. And Hansel took his twin sister's hand, and they walked on and on, their path guided by the pebbles, which were as bright as peppermint candy. They walked on and on through the night. And just at daybreak, when the sun was rising in the east, and the morning birds were singing, they were back at their father's house. They knocked at the door, and when the woman opened it, she was shocked to see them still alive. But she pretended it had all been their fault.
You bad, lazy things! Why are you sleeping so long in the forest? We thought you weren't coming back anymore. Get inside!
But their father was happy because the spell had worn off, and he threw his arms around them, seeing that everything was still all right. That very evening, the wicked woman again sent them to bed early, and she took the woodcutter aside in the kitchen.
Now look, we've eaten everything there is to eat in this house except the knives and forks. The children simply cannot stay here one day longer.
But listen,
No listening about it. Something better be done, husband. Something better be done. Something better be done, husband. Something better be done.
Oh, Hansel,
Something better
she's
be done.
hypnotizing him again. And what'll we do this time? You've used up all the white pebbles. We can use the bread she gives us instead. I'll break off crumbs and drop them behind us the same way I did last time. Oh, that's a good idea.
So the following morning, the woman made the twins get up
You lazy things. Can't lie around in bed all day, you know.
and gave them each a piece of bread, shouting that they should hurry since there was work to be done. On the way through the forest, which was deeper and darker than it ever seemed before, Hansel crumpled the crusts in his pocket and stopped every so often to throw a crumb on the ground.
What What are you doing, son?
Waving to the squirrels, Father. They look so happy today.
You little goon. There are no squirrels in this forest. They'd be too afraid.
But by the time she had told him, they were already at the clearing where the fire was to be built.
Now stay here. And go to sleep again if you want to. But don't go anywhere until we come back for you. There are beings and creatures in the woods.
When it was dark, they finally fell asleep, and no one came to bring them home. Still, when the moon rose, they were not afraid, because their trail had been marked.
Come on, Gretel. We'll get back without any trouble. All we have to do is follow the cross line. That's strange. They ought to be right here. Are there any over where you are?
Everywhere they looked, there was not a single crumb. The birds of the forest, being hungry themselves, had come and eaten them all. This time, with the woods full of terrible night noises, they were truly lost.
Never mind me, Hansel. Find a way.
All through that night, they wandered in circles, and the following day they did the same, from sunrise until it was dark again. But there was no way at all. No trail, no path, no sign that was friendly. And always there came weird and peculiar noises. Sounds that chilled their hearts so that they threw their arms around each other for protection.
It's getting awful spooky in here. And I'm hungry. We didn't even have those crusts last night since you used them to mark the trail.
I'm pretty tired, too. Are you tired, Gretel?
Oh, yes. We've been walking for so long. Couldn't we rest under that funny tree there and sleep a little bit?
Yeah.
They fell asleep under the curious tree that had a blue trunk. And when they awoke in the morning, there was a strange being singing a mournful song in the branches. They jumped up quickly and ran until they came to a clearing not 10 feet away. And there they saw something wonderful.
Oh, Hansel, it's a house. Look, a little home. And look, the roof is made of candy. And the walls are made of fudge cake. And the doorknobs are chocolate. Oh, look, the knocker is an apple pie.
Hansel reached up and broke off a piece of the door knocker. And it was apple pie. Gretel twisted away part of the wall, and that was a fudge cake. The whole house, the chimneys, shutters, windows, drain pipes, they were all something wonderful to eat. Vanilla and strawberry sundaes, peanut clusters, pistachio eclairs, almost anything you could think of. But while they were eating, a scrawny old voice called out.
Eating, eating, always eating. Who is eating up my house?
And the lemon sherbet door flew open all at once. The children screamed. For there, jumping about in a pointed leather hat, was Muzzledork, the witch of the woods. She was tall and skinny, with hands like the claws of a crab, and a big orange wart on her nose.
Nibble, nibble, time is over, brats. Now it's my turn. I think I'll have you in a stew with bat gravy and mushroom mash. Why, it's been years since I had a boy and girl supper.
Before they could turn and run away, they were wound up with invisible rope and tossed into large wooden cages next to Muzzledork's boiling pot. She used her magic to capture them, because her eyes were almost blind from living in the deep woods so long.
Now you, little girl, you will do the work. Go and fetch some ice cream sodas from the well outside and some cake from the wall. We're going to fatten up your brother because I've decided to eat him first. And don't try to escape since I have a doomed beastie guarding the grounds. He usually eats toadstools and moss, but he'll also chew up little girls.
Terrified, Gretel crept out to the witch's well and drew up a pail of vanilla ice cream soda, which she gave to Hansel. And sure enough, there was a doom beastie watching her the whole time, so she could not run for help.
Good! Now we'll feed your brother on candy and soda until he's good and fat. And when he's as fat as I want him, I'll put him in a pie. Hurry up now, and get some chocolate doorknobs. And you, Hansel, stick your finger out through the cage so I can see how fat you are now. My eyes are not too good.
Thinking cleverly, Hansel took up a piece of straw from the floor of the cage and stuck it out through the bars.
Why, there's nothing to you. All skin and bone. Worse than me. It will take weeks to fatten you up. But never mind, we'll do it. My pot is boiling and waiting. Oh, you'll be tasty with a little bat mash and red pepper and Bermuda onion.
But as the weeks went by and Gretel ran back and forth to the well and Hansel stuffed himself with good food, there was no way for old Muzzledork to tell how fat he was. Because each time she asked to feel his finger, he held out the piece of straw instead. And each time Gretel thought of running away to try and find help, the horrible doom beastie snarled at her and showed its teeth. Finally, after a month, the witch lost patience.
I don't care how skinny you are, brat. I'm hungry. And when I'm hungry, I eat. Tonight, young man, I'm having you for dinner. And tomorrow, your sister.
The witch set about putting more logs under her boiling pot and got an old ladder out of her barn to lean against the side.
Why are you putting that ladder there?
To climb up on, of course, and dump your brother in after I've killed him up. How else would I get him in such a tall pot?
Gretel realized this was her only chance to save her brother and herself, so she laughed and pointed at the ladder.
Why, that silly old thing would hold your weight and Hansel's. It probably would fall apart with just you on it, and then you'd never get to have any little boy stew with your silly back gravy or whatever it is.
It better be strong enough, or you'll make me a new one.
With that, Muzzledork climbed the ladder to test it, and when she was high enough, Gretel ran forward, grabbed the bottom rungs, and tipped the whole thing up, dumping the witch into her own boiling pot. There was a great hissing splash, and a thick, bubbling noise. It was true, and not only had the bars disappeared, but the huge boiling pot turned into a chest of silver and gold. And outside, the doom beastie changed into a big, friendly farm horse that neighed a cheerful hello.
Come on, sister, quick. Let's get this going up on the horse's back and then climb on ourselves. A good old horse always knows his way back to his master's farm.
So they tied on the chest, gave the horse a lump of chocolate doorknob, and off they galloped through the forest until they came to the very village where their father's house was. All the neighbors gathered round them, gazing in awe at such wealth, and exclaiming,
Look, it's the woodcutter's children.
We thought they were lost.
Eaten up by beings
And creatures.
Instead, they're rich.
and fat besides. sides.
Through all the commotion, the children could hardly get through the crowd. But when they finally did, they found their father running to meet them. He picked them up, one in each huge arm, the big horse trotting behind them with the chest on his back. Strangely enough, the woodcutter's evil wife had vanished in a puff of smoke at the same time the witch had been boiled up in her own pot in the woods. So all their troubles were at an end, and they never gave a thought to going hungry again. The woodcutter bought a brand new axe to cut down even bigger trees. The children had hot fudge sundaes whenever they wanted, and the big happy horse, as a reward, got a lifetime supply of chocolate doorknobs.